This question comes from Antoine Jackson. He says, if we traded for a Mike linebacker, who would be some good options? So the first guy I thought of was Denzel Perryman, but Denzel Perryman just suffered an injury, so he's going to miss a significant amount of time. So he's out. So the next guy I thought of was Navarro Bowman. Now you might say to yourself, well, Navarro Bowman, obviously former All-Pro linebacker. Why would the 49ers ever give up Navarro Bowman? Earlier in the season, he was actually rumored to be on the trade block for a long time. And we were one of the teams that was rumored to have talks with the 49ers. Obviously, they went through the draft and they got one of their guys in Reuben Foster in the first round. So Navarro Bowman might not be that far of a stretch as it, as if I come up to you and say, hey, Navarro Bowman, you wouldn't believe me, but I don't think it's that far-fetched. Bowman, former first-team All-Pro linebacker, one of the better middle linebackers in the NFL. He's a top 3 at his position. He's probably second to only Luke Kuechly. Great run stuffer, great quarterback on the defense, gets the calls. He's seen probably every formation in the book. Has played in huge games, obviously. He's played in the Super Bowl, has played in many different NFC Championship games. Navarro Bowman is a stud. He's one of the like I said, he's one of the best at his position. He would help us against the run. He would help us get in the right calls. Even though he hasn't been in this defense, he's been around the league so long, and he's so very talented that he could just play off of ability, to be honest with you. He doesn't really have to know the defense to be successful in this league, just because he's such a smart player, and like I said, he's seen so many different formations that he could just play off of instinct and preparation in the film room. I really wouldn't. I don't think it would be that big of a deal if he came in right now and started him in the linebacker. For those reasons, just because of his experience, he would be a seamless fit. And not only that, but obviously his talent level. He's a super athletic linebacker. He would help us in coverage tremendously. To add a first-team All-Pro middle linebacker would be great. Now, what we would have to give up for him, I don't know. Obviously, he's had a long injury history throughout his career. He's had multiple season-ending injuries. Last one he had, I think last year he tore his ACL. Obviously, he suffered a broken leg in the past. So Navarro Bowman is injury prone, to say the least. So he would be a liability if we traded for him for the long term, but he's still a relatively young player. I don't know how much we would have to give up for him because he is such a super talented guy. But again, was rumored to be on the trade block earlier this season or earlier this year. Wouldn't be surprised. I don't think it's that far-fetched. So if there's anybody we would trade for, I think he would be one of them. Denzel Perryman. You could go outside linebacker. There's some outside linebackers out there. Navarro Bowman, if I had to pick one, then I think Navarro Bowman would be it. But the price might be too high there just because of the caliber of player that we're talking about. But if we could get him for a later round pick, maybe the 49ers just want to move on because of his injury history, then I think it would be a deal worth doing. This question comes from Jared Dickerson. He says, which receiver out of Parker, Stills, and Landry will be Jay Cutler's favorite target? So training camp so far, it's been Jarvis Landry. He's definitely hit Jarvis Landry for the most receptions. And obviously that comes natural because Juice Landry is the most quarterback friendly receiver probably in the entire NFL, especially when you're the best slot receiver in the league. He's by far the best slot receiver in the league. In my opinion, it's not even close. And obviously quarterbacks have that confidence in Jarvis Landry because even if he's covered, especially if it's tight man coverage, especially in a one-on-one, quarterbacks have that comfort level with Juice that he's going to come down with that football because he's done it at such a high level and on a consistent basis that you know that he's going to make a play on the football. You just have that comfort level with Jarvis Landry because we've seen it so many times. And most of the catches that Juice has had in training camp have been pretty long catches. And Jay Cutler's had that trust in him, the playmaking ability of Jarvis Landry. So I think it's going to be Jarvis just because of that. He's probably he's done it at a consistent basis, and he's just the most quarterback friendly guy in the world, especially on third down. If everything's breaking down, it doesn't look good. Your last-ditch effort will go to Jarvis Landry because of his playmaking ability. We've seen that. How many times have we seen that as Dolphins fans? 1,000. We Jarvis Landry just because of those reasons and the comfort level. Like, right away, those two had chemistry. Like, right away. As soon as Jay Cutler became a Dolphin, those two were... It was like natural. So I think it's going to be Jarvis Landry, just as from what we've seen in training camp at least. And the other guy that has actually had really good chemistry with that he's had really good chemistry with is Devonta Parker. Devonta Parker, they've hit on multiple long bomb touchdowns. In training camp today, they hit on another one. It was the exact same one that they hit on yesterday. It was a deep, I think it was a go route in the end zone. It was an over-the-shoulder grab, so fade route-esque looking. And he had one today and he had one yesterday. And it seems like every training camp practice, they're hitting on one of those routes. And like I said, I think Jay Cutler is really good at throwing those kind of ball where it needs to be. Obviously, because of his arm talent, he's just accurate on those routes. I mean, he's really, really good at it. So DP and him have gotten off to a really good start as well. So I think, it's going to be a close race between Juice and DP because he has chemistry with both of them as of right now. Like I said, last, 2 training camp practices he's hit on, and he's only participated in 3 so far, and both of those 2 he hit DP on a touchdown. So that's really good news. 6'3", he runs a 4.3. He's probably been the best offensive player throughout training camp so far. He's been the most impressive looking. So Devonta Parker just naturally, I mean, for a quarterback, that's easy as well. He's just a playmaker. He just makes plays on the football. So he's same thing with Juice. I mean, he's just a playmaker. How many times have we seen that? So that just comes naturally as a quarterback. So it's nice to see those 2. So I think out of the 3, I think it's definitely going to be Juice. I think that's the easy answer. But I think Devonta Parker and him have gotten off to a great start as well. This question comes from Cody. He says, if you were to pick a 4th wideout, would you pick Drew Morgan, Jakeem Grant, or Stringfellow? So if I had to pick a 4th guy on the depth chart right now, it would definitely be Leonte Carroo. And I think Jakeem Grant would be very close to him at this point in time. I mean, I think if he can keep up what he's doing right now, he's on a hot streak right now. In terms of being in training camp and making plays, and obviously in the preseason game he made plays. It was so nice to see him getting in the end zone because that's what he did at college so well, and obviously that's why we drafted him, is his touchdown production was off the charts. So it's nice to see him make that play that we've seen him make 1,000 times in college in a NFL-like atmosphere. It was really, really nice to see that. And obviously he's made plays up and down in training camp. He's been a beast. So he's on a hot streak right now. Let's hope that he can be consistent throughout preseason and continue to make those plays. Because of the talent behind him, you got to be consistent, because if the other guys are being consistent making plays, then they're going to take your job, because that's how talented they are. And obviously Jakeem Grant, he's also been on a hot streak. He had his best day as a Dolphin a couple days ago in training camp where he caught 2 touchdowns. One of them was from Jay Cutler. It was over Tony Lippett, and I think the other one was over Walt Aikens from Brandon Dowdy or David Fells. I can't remember, but he's been on a hot streak as well. Obviously in the Atlanta Falcons preseason game, climbed the ladder at, I think he's 5'6", and just brought it down. Jakeem Grant, I think the move to the outside position for Jakeem Grant has been a revelation, to say the least. I think the slot position, he's just not strong enough to get off of press. I don't know what it is. I just don't think he's physical enough, because a lot of playing the slot position is leverage and strength. You really have to body up on somebody to be a successful slot receiver. You have to use your body, and Jakeem Grant doesn't weigh all that much, so he's not physical enough to play in the slot position. So I think having him on the outside, obviously corners tend to play off. Outside corners tend to play off. I think that's a death sentence for you as a corner playing Jakeem Grant, because he's underratedly good route runner, and he has the speed of like a Tyreek Hill. He's got Tyreek Hill-esque speed. So playing him on the outside, I think is gonna be even better for him. So those 2, I think you guys have to keep your eye on, but it's going to be hard for the Dolphins to keep all of these guys. If DeMaurice Stringfellow, and don't forget about Francis Owusu, those 2 put on a show on Thursday night, and if they can continue to do that, then I don't know how they don't make the roster, because the plays that they made were insane. I mean, the 99-yard touchdown might as well have been 100 yards for Stringfellow. What a grab, what a catch. I mean, he had multiple catches in that game where just insane. One of them was called back because of a pass interference call, which it wasn't pass interference, it was just hand fighting. But if Stringfellow can be that elite of a deep threat at his size, with that size and speed combination at 6'2", I don't know how you can't let that guy go. And same thing with Francis Owusu. The man in Stanford did the exact same thing that he was doing in Stanford in a preseason game. He made insane catches. And if he can be that level of a deep threat as well, he's a big body guy, and he can run. I think he ran a 4.3 in college. It's game over. So I don't know how you don't keep those guys on your roster. And then you forget about Drew Morgan, who's had an insanely good camp as well. Hopefully we see more of him in preseason. And I think we will. But it's so hard. That is by far the most interesting thing to watch in terms of roster cuts at the end of preseason, because we have to find a way to keep most of these guys, man, because they're so talented, and especially when it comes to developing these guys, if they're showing that this kind of talent this early in their career, they're only going to get better. I don't know how you can let any of those guys go. So it's going to be tough decisions for the Dolphins, but I definitely think Leonte Carew and Jakeem Grant battling for that fourth spot right now, and I think Leonte is going to end up winning it because you can keep Leonte as just a straight-up receiver, and you can keep Jakeem Grant as a returner. And I think that's how it's going to end up happening. So you really don't even have to count Jakeem as a receiver per se. So yeah, I think it's going to be Leonte. Eventually, it will be Leonte. If I had to pick somebody for that fourth guy, it would definitely be Carew. This question comes from Brandon. He says, Devon Gottschall and Charles Harris could be dangerous, don't you think? Absolutely. These two have been an absolute revelation so far in training camp, especially Devon. Devon has went from a prospect, a raw prospect who might take a year or two to develop into what he'll eventually become, to one of the starter on the Miami Dolphins defense. Jordan Phillips continues to be inconsistent and continues to be one of the most frustrating players in Miami Dolphins history. The man shows flashes of greatness, and he just cannot put a consistent drive together. He just can't do it. And Devon is the completely and polar opposite of Jordan Phillips. First of all, from a talent perspective and from a technician perspective, he's way more far along than I think the Dolphins ever thought he would be at this point in his career. Like I said, he was a prospect when we drafted him. He comes into training camp, he works his butt off, and then he starts. It's just been amazing so far. And obviously there are questions of his size. Is he big enough to play defensive tackle? I think so far from what we've seen, especially in the preseason, him going up against the ones in preseason and in training camp, he's dominated. He's dominated Craig Urbick. He's dominated most of our guards or centers in practice. And in training camp, in preseason, we saw the same thing. He absolutely dominated. On that, I think it was a 3rd and 1 when Telvin Coleman came into the game, who's one of the best running backs in the league, and just got straight up stuck in the backfield by Devon. What a play by Devon against a Super Bowl caliber offense in the preseason game. That play signifies what I'm talking about. Not only does Devon bring a run-stuffing presence, but he also brings that pass-rushing presence. That's what he did best in the SEC at LSU, rushing the passer. His pad level is so low because he's not the biggest defensive tackle, and we've seen this with Aaron Donald. We've seen this trend with smaller defensive tackles. They've just been better pass rushers than obviously bigger defensive tackles. I think Devon has a chance to do that in the NFL as well. So he's not just a run stuffing defensive tackle. He's also a tremendous pass rusher. That's, in my opinion, that's what he did best coming out of college, especially when you watch him. His quarterback pressures his numbers were really good in that area, and so were his sacks. I think he only had 2 this past season, but his pressures were pretty impressive for a defensive tackle. And him playing next to Sue is just going to give him even more opportunity to be that pass rushing dominant threat, because you have to put so much attention on Sue that he's going to get a ton of one-on-ones. And if he gives the effort that he gives out there at training camp and preseason, which there is no reason to doubt that he wouldn't, then he's going to be a dominant threat on this and on the defensive line. Again, the Dolphins thought that he was going to be a sub-package guy his first year. They thought, we're going to put him out there on obvious pass rushing, 3rd and long situations. And he is surprised. I think he's the biggest surprise of the Dolphins this year, by far. So far, he's been the biggest surprise. And it's awesome that, we drafted somebody like him, because Jordan Phillips has just been a headache. Just been an absolute headache. And Sue's going to benefit from Devon as well. So I love it, and I love the effort he gives, especially next to Sue. And, we all know that 1,010% effort every single down. So adding somebody with that high of a motor and that level of talent next to him is going to be it's going to be really fun to watch. And then obviously Charles Harris, very underrated debut for him. He had 4 quarterback pressures and 1 holding call against him. So basically 5 quarterback pressures, which is insane. 5 quarterback hurries, however you want to say it. Had a tremendous rookie debut. He's been amazing in training camp. To be honest with you, he's looked better than Andre Branch. And Andre Branch has had a tremendous training camp. And especially when you compare, obviously Charles Harris is going against lesser competition than Andre Branch was going against the first team, Atlanta Falcons. But he's still dominated. And he's been dominating in training camp. In my opinion, he's looked better than Andre Branch. The thing where Charles Harris, and we saw this in the preseason game, is that they ran at him, and there was that one play where he got pancaked to the ground. That's something that he's going to have to work on, is setting the edge. But other than that, the athleticism that he displayed in the preseason game, it was tremendous. I mean, you know, that's the first thing you notice is the athleticism. And, you know, in a division where we play Tyrod Taylor, and that's something that the Dolphins defensive line has struggled with, is stopping athletic quarterbacks. We struggled with that in Colin Kaepernick, and we struggled with Tyrod Taylor. Now that we have speed on the defensive line, who's flat out been faster than I ever thought he was going to be, that's just not going to be a problem anymore, especially on obvious pass rushing situations. That problem has completely been fixed, because in the past we've had people like Jason Jones rushing the passer. Jason Jones was so far out of his prime, and might as well had and Mario Williams as well, might as well had a Walker out there, an old man Walker. That's how slow he is. Okay, we've improved the speed on this defensive line. It's not even close. It's like night and day. The defensive line is so much improved from this year, from last year. It's probably the one, other than the receiver position, probably the most improved on the team, and the tight end position as well. It's night and day difference. And a lot of people forget William Hayes. He ran a 4.6 coming out of college, so he's also as athletic as well. So this whole defensive line is just so much faster than it was a year ago, and Charles Harris is going to help us in that department tremendously. So both of them have been a huge surprise, especially Devon. Charles Harris is just, both of them have been having, Devon's gotten better and better as camp has gone along. Same thing with Charles Harris, and I can't wait to see them play more preseason games, because I think we're going to see beasts. This question comes from Marcus. He says, do you think we should trade for Michael Kendricks, the linebacker for the Philadelphia Eagles? You know, some of the things that I saw from Kendricks last year is, I don't know if it was because he's an athlete. He's a really good athlete. So he struggled in coverage last year, and it was interesting because he is such a good athlete. He shouldn't struggle in coverage the way he did last year. Obviously, the defense switched to a 4-3, so maybe that had something to do with it. Maybe the new defense had something to do with it. Maybe he didn't acclimate to the playbook as well. I really don't know, but he did struggle in coverage. But he shouldn't because he is such a good athlete. It really reminded me of how Anthony Barr performed. There should be no reason that Anthony Barr struggles in coverage. He's one of the more athletic he's probably the most athletic linebacker in the NFL. So there should be no reason that man should struggle in coverage. Same thing with Kendrick. He's a good athlete. He shouldn't struggle in coverage the way he did last season. So that's an issue that I saw from him last year. But other than that, he's had a very good career as a linebacker through, you know, with the Philadelphia Eagles' entire career. And obviously he wants out of the Eagles organization. He didn't get a lot of snaps last season. He got a limited amount of snaps. He wants to go somewhere where he can start, which is understandable. And the Philadelphia Eagles said no. So I don't know if they're still willing to trade for him. But should the Dolphins trade for him? If we did, I think it should be for the bare minimum, like a very, very, very late round pick. The last thing we need to do as an organization is give up more picks. So if we did trade for him, it would have to be for something really, really, really cheap, because obviously he doesn't want to be an Eagle anymore. The Eagles don't feel the same way, so they would have to. I'm not giving up anything significant for him. Even a 6th round, 7th round pick, I think, is even a little bit too much for him. So I think he's a good player. Don't get me wrong. I think he can add some speed to this defense. Open field tackler. He's been in the league long enough, to read defenses at a good rate. So I like him as a player, but definitely don't want to give up too much for him at this point in time. Mind the trade depending on what we give up for him. I would not mind him coming in as a player, but I think he should be. Obviously, the Dolphins are waiting to see what Mike Hull does. In case you guys don't know, before they trade or make any moves, they're waiting to see if Mike Hull can handle the starting position. So if he can't handle it, then they will go out and make a move. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do if he can't. And Kendricks is obviously a viable option. Like I said, he's a good player, but don't want to give up too much for him. So that is going to be it, guys. That has been your Miami Dolphins fan Q&A for this week. If I didn't get your question in this video, you will be in the Miami Dolphins podcast, because I literally answer everybody's question in that podcast anyway. So don't worry about it. And I will see you guys in the next one. Before we start the podcast, let's get through the rigmarole first. Remember, guys, this podcast posts each and every single Wednesday. The first segment of the show, we go through all the Miami Dolphins news you need to know about. The second segment of the show, we go through all the AFC East news you need to know about. The third segment of the show, we highlight some of the players that are must-watches on game day. And the fourth segment of the show, we go through the Miami Dolphins fan Q&A.